Welcome to the Laurent Collective podcast, where we go deeper than just surface talk.
Each week, we'll explore everything from family, business, creativity, culture, and faith.
To make sure not to miss an episode, be sure to subscribe and hop on to Instagram at Laurent Collective to chat with us about this episode. Does the idea of classroom Valentines stress you out? Do your kids want to send a special message to a loved one? We've made it easy for you this year to help your kids send love to others for Valentine's Day. At laurentcollective.com, we have instant downloads that you can print at home. Each download includes a sheet of 6 smaller cards for classroom Valentines, the ability to print a 5x7 card, and a coloring sheet with the artwork for kids to customize and give to others. Help your kids spread the love to others at laurentcollective.com. Search under Valentine's Day and click cards. Hello, hello.
I think you've started everyone saying hello, hello.
Sorry.
Okay.
I think
your thing.
I think it's a natural thing because I feel like other podcasts that I listen to, they always
say
say
multiple
that.
hellos like
yeah.
that? Okay.
Maybe it's just
Sure.
like an unconscious
We
thing
can go
that
with
I've
trend.
heard. I'm pretty sure I know, like, listening to Armchair Expert, I'm pretty sure Dak Shepard
Oh, they have funny
always
openings. They actually call
things.
each other like different nicknames and stuff too. Maybe we need nicknames. I'll have to think about
Who
that.
knows?
Anyways, today we are going to talk about what it's like to get rid of pretty much everything you own. We have some experience in it, and I feel like it's the beginning. Well, it's slightly towards the beginning of the year. And so that means that sometimes you're looking to like declutter your home or change, or you're looking at your space and your things differently.
Well, you might just be feeling overwhelmed with everything around you.
You might be feeling overwhelmed, that kind of stuff. And so this does not just apply to you if you are moving. This also applies if you are just wanting to have kind of a bit of a more freedom or not as much stuff.
Just refresh.
Decluttering and that kind of thing. So for us, we when we moved, we could only take a very small amount of stuff. And we're going to explain that in just a second. But so it really did, we had to go through everything.
Yeah, so it was like we really had, we didn't have, we had a little bit of an option, but not much.
No, not
so
much.
we had to
without a
we had to
large
figure out,
expense, which we decided wasn't worth it.
Yeah,
we
exactly.
had to get rid of most everything. So we thought we'd chat with you of like what we determined to keep, how we went through that process, and frankly, how it made us feel.
Yeah.
Because going through your stuff has lots of feelings involved with it. And I think the overall arching thing that we realized in going through this process several years ago is how quickly, without even realizing it, our items and our stuff can take a hold of us. And we noticed this in this process.
It's such a huge thing. I think, we can grow so attached to certain things, and not unhealthy ways, but just like really.
Well, they can be unhealthy.
They can be unhealthy, but it's just.
Or you don't realize it.
Yeah, you just don't realize it.
Yeah.
So, for sure.
So, again, to put some context around it, we moved from the United States in the Midwest to London, England in 2016.
Yep.
At that time, we had 3 children. We had a dog. And we had a home that we lived in. I think it was 13 years that we had lived in that home.
Yeah, it was 13 years.
We brought all of our kids. That has its own emotional thing. Like every single kid came home from the hospital to that house. We had a previous dog that we had lost, and then a new puppy was brought in. I mean, we moved there when we were first married without kids.
Yeah,
it was all of our big life events.
It was all of our firsts.
Exactly.
In a lot of ways.
So the home itself and the space itself had all that in it. Yeah. Number one. We also we had made a decision early on that we weren't going to live in that big of a space. So depending where you are from in the world and listening, like this may be very large, but for where we were living, this was considered small. That we stayed in a 3-bedroom that was 1,200 or 1,300 square feet.
Yeah, 1,200.
One of those. We lived in that with all 3 of us. Our boys have always shared a room.
We had a small yard. We had a garage.
We had a garage. We had an attic. We had a lot of storage space.
Attic?
Whoa. That had a lot of stuff in it. Yeah. And so that gives you context of like what we were moving from. And now, for any of you that might be, well, there are different areas of London, of course, and things like that. But generally, since we have moved to London and we knew this going into it, like we were going to live in a much smaller space, we would be lucky if we had some kind of garden. Like right now, we just have two small balconies, one balcony that is you basically
that's
stand
our
on.
outside space.
That's our outside space, and that kind of thing. And kitchens are much smaller. Some houses have attics. We do not have an attic. Generally in Europe, like storage space is not a thing. Closets, walk-in closets. We had walk-in closets. I've seen a couple walk-in closets, but barely any. And that's a different
level of
yes.
funding and
we're not
money.
Living in those spaces. So we really, we say we had to go through everything, we legit mean it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably not the case just for London, but for any major city in the world.
Yes, space is small.
Space is just a premium. So
exactly.
You're not going to get much in a living space unless you have certain finances.
And for us, yes, when you move internationally, sometimes, or if you're moving across the country or just even down the street, you still have to go through your stuff. So there's nothing worse than moving into a new place and you're like, why did I
bring that?
So regardless if you've done the international move or not, for us, we had chosen not to ship a bunch of our furniture. I'm so glad we didn't because it wouldn't have even fitted in the spaces we had.
Because sizes are different.
Exactly. Sizes and things like that are different. So we had to go through everything. So our process was we had to go through each and every single item, and we basically had to say, do we love this item and why? Now,
that sounds exhausting in some ways, but it's worth it.
Yeah. And so sometimes it was a very easy answer. And if it was no, then it was why do we have this? That goes into, and we'll talk about what you do with your stuff after you realize you
why
don't
do we
need it.
have 3 of those?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, especially when we got into the attic, I was like, what is this here for?
Yeah.
A lot of items sometimes are well, I'm going to keep that because maybe when we had a lot of projects we thought we would do that were either in our garage or our attic, that sat there for a long time.
Not when, I think it's just more of or if we ever have this space, that would be perfect for this, or
Or it's the funny things, our son with his grandma had won a goldfish one time, which we were oh, we don't want to fish. And the thing lived for a year. But then we put in the attic the goldfish bowl with the little net to get the goldfish out to clean it and some food. We never ever had any intention of ever getting another goldfish, yet we hung on to that stuff. So there are just some things, and that was easy. It was that is in the pile to get rid of. We do not need that.
Gosh, I forgot about that fish bowl.
Yeah, the goldfish bowl. So there are things like that are really easy, but there's going to be a lot of things that are not so easy of deciding whether you keep it or not. So I think one of the first questions, and this is usually what comes down to a lot of stuff, is it sentimental?
Yeah.
Do you want to keep it because it's sentimental? And often it's really hard to give away if it has some kind of sentimental thing to it, a memory, a person that gave it to you, any of those things. And so that was really hard for us because we had a lot of those type of things, but we realized there's no way we can take all of these with us. And so what does that mean? So some things meant, and I'm saying this from 2 people who obviously are artists and we love art and stuff like that. Some of it meant our children's artwork.
Or even my own, my own artwork. Exactly. I sold a bunch of stuff before we left. Yeah. Because I knew we couldn't take it with us.
And so with that, we came up with a solution, at least, for the kids' artwork, and this could go for some other things too. We picked our absolute favorites. So on our wall right now, we have a piece of artwork that was something Zane did when he was in the States, and we brought it here. But we took very few things, and the rest I took photos of.
Yep.
And we have it documented. So we have that, and I can put it in an album. I haven't actually done this yet, but I could put in an album or that kind of thing. So the memory is still there. They have it. Yep. They can see how they used to draw when they were little and stuff like that. But that accumulates quickly. All the projects they bring home from school, some of them that let's admit parents that were oh, I don't really want to keep this.
Yep.
Keep it for a time, take a picture. You've got the memory. So those were a little bit easier, but there are some things like a blanket, that was handmade from somebody when one of our children was born and stuff like that. by the time we were moving for most of our kids, like that stuff wasn't going to come with us. And sure, we could leave we have a box or something like that for the kids, but like, are they really going to want that blanket when they're older?
Yeah.
So thinking through
Just
those
never know.
things. Yeah. We did. So like, and sometimes the sentimental things are like, sometimes it's time to let go of it too. And that's hard.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. And so we did, I think, what do we have? 4 small-ish, like plastic, those big plastic crates, things, storage boxes. We have 4 of those in the United States right now. And basically those are holding anything that might be like something that was like, we have a lot of photo albums that we each time we go, we bring a couple more back here to have those, because those were just going to be heavy to bring all of them at once. So there's a lot of photo albums and stuff like that. And we didn't bring all of our vinyl records. So vinyl records are in there. There's some boring things like, for taxes, you're not supposed to throw away things for, 7 years in the United States. So there's boring paperwork like that, especially because we have a business.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. But, and I think there's a couple things that were given to us from our parents of memories, and a couple small things from the kids when they were babies. But again, we gradually keep bringing those things, and we go through it every time we're there, and we get rid of more stuff that we're like, we don't need this.
Yeah.
So it's hard when something's sentimental. And then it's also really hard if you paid a lot for something.
Yeah.
And you realize I haven't used it at all, or someone else maybe paid a lot. They gifted it to you, and it was an expensive item.
I think those are hard ones.
Those are really hard too.
To you.
I think one thing I can think of for us is we really liked our plates, our dinner plates and salad bowls and stuff, and they had been given to us from a family for our wedding and stuff, and they are not ones that I would have spent my own money on. Like, that was a really, really nice gift. And it was really, really hard to get rid of those. It just wasn't practical to bring them. Frankly, they are an American-sized dinner plate, and so they wouldn't even fit in the cupboards in the kitchen or the dishwashers.
Yeah.
So glad we got rid of them. However, that was really hard, because that had, not only sentimental, these were plates to start our years off being married, but also like I really, really liked them, and they were nice plates.
Yeah, we picked those up for a reason.
I know, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was really hard. And sometimes, it's hard, and then you are like, oh, it's okay. Like it, that kind of thing. Sometimes it's hard because, was I given it? And you don't have, like, sometimes it's who gave it to you, even if we had a lot of this stuff. Even if we, number one, weren't using it, or it didn't fit with our style, or wasn't something we really even generally liked, but we felt like we had to keep it because of who gave it to us and that kind of thing. So we pretty much had like a whole box of stuff up in the attic that was given to us from some people, and love their heart behind giving it and their intentions and everything like that. But it just wasn't. I mean, my grandparents at one point have given us this like statue of like a dove or something, and it was really music,
pretty,
very
looking,
nice. The meaning behind it and the card they give was, all of it was very nice, but like it did not. It wasn't. So we kept it for however long it was, a long time.
Yeah.
And so those things can be hard. Of like, oh, that's hard to get rid of. And I think the other thing I identified with too is like, I don't want to be wasteful getting rid of all this stuff. Like, I don't want to just put it in the dumpster. Now, something, if it's broken and stuff, like, and it can't be fixed.
Yeah, why are we keeping it?
Why are you keeping it?
Yeah.
And that we did have things like that. We'll fix it one day.
Yeah.
And if it could be something that was easy, like, I don't know, if you have a broken lawnmower, there are plenty of people that buy broken lawnmowers to go
fix up and resell.
So there are things that even, we have found here, we have broken things here sometimes that are broken, and people grab them for free because they fix them up and redo them.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can still do something with it. So it's hard if you think you're being wasteful getting rid of it. But we'll talk about ways you can get rid of that and kind of not feel that anymore.
Yeah. And then one of the other things is we talk about is like, how often do we actually use stuff, or how often do we actually use this item or whatever it is. And I think that for me is really hard, because because I'm creative and as an artist, like, I want to keep things around in case something triggers and I'm like really inspired by something, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I have that thing, now I can finally bring that out. And actually, that's probably not the best thing either, is because they just have stuff and crap just sitting everywhere. And am I actually going to use it in an everyday basis and things like that? I think that's one of the big things that at least I've learned over the last 6 years since we moved here, because we were in such a smaller space, is making sure the things that we do have around us are things that we actually use.
Well, and even the small things take up space. And when you have a lot of small things, they take up space.
Yeah.
I think a great example of this is your kitchen items. I definitely know I have, and I still even have here, acquire a lot of kitchen things. You're like, oh, I need it for this thing. And you use it once a year for that. Or you really think you need it because you're on this trend for a while and then you only use it. Pat's smiling at me right now because there is something I bought when we moved here. And it's like this warmer thing. And it was when we were hosting lots of people and stuff at our house. But I was like, this will be so good. We'll keep the food warm when we host. We've used it twice. And I am like, oh, but maybe.
We've used it twice.
We used it for Christmas one time and for Thanksgiving dinner. So we've used it twice. It's big. It's great.
It's not huge, but it's just like.
It takes up space.
Yeah.
And I haven't used it that much. Why am I keeping it?
Yeah.
And so I just probably need to get rid of that. So even when we moved again for our third time here, we have this thing I'm looking at right now in one of our cupboards that we stuck some kitchen stuff that I said, put it up there. And if we don't regularly come down to get it, we need to get rid of it in the next few months. So there are things I need to do that in the first 6 months or something like that. So kitchen things you can really see, or can you maybe you have 3 different kitchen items and you realize you could buy one thing that does all 3 items.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of that where we were like, oh, we don't need that thing because we have, that kind of thing. So that's a great example. And some things just take up a lot of space. Like, I'm going to call myself out right now. Like, we have a slow cooker. Our kids hate food out of the slow cooker. I need to get rid of it at this point. Like, now, we used to have an Instant Pot and sadly it broke. I use the Instant Pot all the time, and it has a slow cooker function. So, again, it has a rice cooker function. So, like, you don't need 3 appliances. I have one or could have one kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then we had to ask ourselves, like, what is most important for us to take? How did that make you feel?
I don't know if I necessarily have had too much of a problem with that. You know what I mean? I think thinking about what is most important really kind of plays itself out, especially in the conversation about the piece or whatever. Like, it's weird. I like to keep things around for certain projects or whatever. But in some ways, I don't necessarily have certain attachment to some things. But yeah, I mean, I think thinking about things and how important they are is definitely wasn't hard for me. So I don't know. It's a great question because again, I think it just really goes, okay, really, is this that important for me to have? And really depending on what it is, it's probably an easy answer. So,
and that's all of us are gonna answer that question differently.
Yeah.
And so, like, our suitcases, we brought over. It's called a whirly pop. Yeah. Is that what it's called? A whirly pop. So homemade popcorn thing that you make homemade popcorn in, and it's not the smallest thing. It's big. No, it's not big, but it's
just clunky.
It's clunky. It's awkward. Things like that. We put it in our suitcase, padded around clothes, and brought it over because we wanted it to be one of the first things that we did with our kids to get some go.
Well, we didn't know how long our other stuff was going to be.
Yeah, and we were afraid if it waited months.
In a big crate.
And we specifically said to the kids, what are the things that would make a new place that we've never been before feel like home? And 2 things that they said in a house would be Daddy's homemade popcorn and some homemade chocolate chips. And so I literally did because I was fearful.
Chocolate chip cookies.
Chocolate chip cookies. Sorry, not chocolate chips. I don't make homemade chocolate chips. That's good for you if you do that, but that's a bit too much for me. And so we brought that over. That may, to somebody else, you may be like, that is not important to me whatsoever. But to our family, like, we make homemade popcorn a lot, and that's like
every week.
Every week we make it, if not multiple times per week, and that is part of our family. So again, someone else may be like, and we were afraid of, I'm actually so glad we brought it because we can't find that same thing here to make homemade popcorn. But
to be honest, we are investigating other ways to get rid of that whirly pop.
So we don't have that big thing.
So we don't have that big thing. And how can we do it in a different way? So but at the same time, that's, again, thinking about that's important. That was important to all of us.
Exactly. So those are the kind of things. So don't judge your importantness level with what other people made. Because some people were like, what? Like when they were asked, what is important for you to bring? And we're like, well, actually, we're packing this in our suitcase. And
so it was so helpful
again,
in that
you gotta
transition.
think personally for you.
It was so helpful in that transition.
Yes, it was one of the first things we had when we had no furniture or anything else. And we just ate it right out of the thing, if I remember. So, and that is the other thing. Like, that's the second question. The important, and then what will make it feel like home? That's what we ask the kids. What will make it feel like home? And that kind of stuff. And so that's really important to ask yourself.
I think a lot of times when you ask that question, it's things that you don't really would
like
normally
like
think
that.
about. Like, yeah, exactly. Like, the popcorn maker, like, that sounds weird. Like, that seems like something really easy to just get rid of. But actually that was, in order for us to feel at home, that was a major thing.
For one of our kids, and this did not come till later, this was not in our suitcase. It was this duvet that he's been passed down from me. That thing is so old and gross, and he loves it, and it's what he sleeps with every night.
Oh, believe me.
You want to get rid of it.
I want to get rid of it. But the fact that you just said it was gross, you love curling up in that blanket.
Oh, it's such a cozy blanket, even though, I mean, it's not, it's great. It is great. It's very comfortable. So if you have kids in particular, this whole process can be very hard, especially depending on their ages. If you have really young kids, it's almost easier because you're like, well, they're not going to know that this thing isn't around anymore. Yeah. But depending on their ages, this can be very difficult. And so we handled this a couple different ways. We hand selected a couple things that were important for us to bring. So again, this was for us personally. We have been given by grandparents, when Jude was smaller and he was really into cooking and stuff, a very nice like wooden kitchen thing. And it came apart in pieces. And so we knew in the small amount of stuff we were shipping, that was coming. Yep. Like that we priced it out and how much it would be.
This is a little play kitchen.
It was small.
Yeah.
It was a little play kitchen. We had a bunch over the years that acquired a bunch of we did narrow those down, but like, kitchen food and little kitchen appliances and stuff like that. And we knew with Veda that she would play with it and that Jude would still play with it. And it was something that could be shipped over. Again, we made the decision, the kids didn't, but we knew that was important. Legos. We knew we wanted to bring Legos over. Yep. We did go through a lot of them, but we brought a lot of Legos and we brought some wooden blocks that the kids to this day still play with. So it's the things that again, that was going to make it feel like home for them to have some of those things around. Replacing those things for us was going to be pretty exorbitant and expensive. It didn't make sense when we already had it, and they were going to fit into the thing that we were shipping here. But then there was a lot of other stuff that the kids, we wanted them to have ownership, because you don't want to just get rid of their stuff, especially when they're already in a slightly traumatic, like, what do you mean we're moving to a different country or a different state or even a different house? I mean,
I'm leaving my friends.
For one of our kids, like even moving into a temporary condo situation in the States was really hard for him. And so we had baggies that we had for like action figures that we said, and they were pretty big ones. They weren't small.
Anything they could fit in the bag. Anything
they could fit in the bag. We gave them each a certain, for the boys. Veda was small enough that I don't know that we had that much, she decided. But we said to the boys, what do you want to bring? It has to fit in here. Everything else has to go. And it took them a while to do it. We said, you don't have to do this right away. Like, do it gradually, because you might remember that you want this thing instead of that. Yep. They actually didn't have too much of a problem with that. No, one of the harder things was their stuffed animals. Our kids really like stuffed animals.
Well, one in particular.
And he just had a lot, and somehow we're back to having a lot again. But we said you only have this many. We gave him a little suitcase thing and said, or little, I say suitcase, it was fairly small, and said they have to fit in here along with your bag of toys, and that's what we're bringing. We said, do not worry about the Legos. Don't worry about these couple things. We're bringing those. Yep. That's not your decision-making thing. And you know what? They did really well with it when we said it has to fit in this space. And so if you are even in the process of decluttering and not moving, you can still do the same thing. Buy a basket or something like that and say it has whatever you want to keep has to fit in this space. And if it doesn't, we're going to have to decide what things to go. But let them do that. Or if they need help, you can help them. Like some of the things I'd be like, oh, look, this one has a hole in it. Like, or this arm of this guy is coming off. Like maybe we should.
And to be honest, we actually continue to use some of this like on a yearly basis with our kids, even probably more than a yearly basis.
They have baskets for certain things, and if it doesn't fit in there, you need to get rid of something if something's coming in. Yeah. So kids, let your kids have ownership in it as well. And then, if you are like, I am a bit stressed about how I get rid of these things.
Yeah, like, okay, I've decided to get rid of it. What do I do with it?
That's a process. And, I should say, too, one of the hardest things for me to get rid of was books. We had a lot of books. And for me, having a house filled with books makes it feel like home. So that answers that question to me. That is important to me, that we have lots of books and stuff like that. And not only do we have had adult books, but kids books. So again, we did the same thing, a certain amount of space that we said books can be brought over in. And we had a friend come over to help us go through the adult books and was like, Maya, you can't have 6 copies of Great Gatsby. Which one's going with you? And, that was good.
Yeah.
And same with kids ones and stuff like that. That was really hard, but we still have books in our house and things like that.
Yeah, we definitely have accumulated.
We have
a large amount of books again. But,
but
again, that's important to us.
That was important to us, yeah. But how do you get rid of things? So number one, if it's completely junk and trashed, don't give it to charity. Just get rid of it. Recycle it if you can.
Yeah.
Maybe if it is something that is broken, like we said earlier, there may be people that want that to use for a project or repair and sell. Yeah. So you can always do things like Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist in the States, Gumtree here. There's all kinds of now places.
Yeah, like
here in London, there's several places you post things for free on certain apps so that people aren't putting waste out there. Every city's going to have their own thing. Or you can give it to somebody else. Like I know we posted a lot of things for free. We're like, does anybody need this? And they kids came and grabbed that other bag of toys the kids didn't take and things like that. So you can give things away to people or neighbors or people in need.
Yeah.
And research charities and things like that need it. And then obviously you can sell things too. Like don't discredit the fact. I know it takes some time. It takes some coordinating, but
it's worth it.
You can do garage sales or what do they call them here? Car boot sales.
Yeah, but
that's a little bit more difficult in a city, but it's so easy to sell things online now. Like I just said and named all those places. I'm shocked at the things I post and people within 24 hours are coming to our house to buy that. I'm like, no one wants this. Yeah. And people are coming to buy it. And so I think sometimes the hardest thing is just it feels like, then I have to coordinate it. And for a season, you'll be coordinating that and going back and forth with people and things like that. And we've done that. And that's hard. But it's worth it because then, especially if you're moving to a new place and things like that, you can first we did that when we were going through our debt payoff and we sold things to be able to put that money then towards our debt. Or maybe you're wanting something new and you don't have the funds yet for it. So you can sell some stuff you don't need to get it. And then, for us, that money was put into savings to use to get things like new furniture and stuff like that.
Or like, even if you get, if you're like, okay, these are all coming with me. And then you get into your new space and you realize, actually, I don't need that.
Yeah. And you can sell it then too.
Sell it then too as well. So.
I think for us, when it came to selling things, some things are hard to just part with. And we had just over the years, we really like mid-century furniture and we had acquired a lot of it through like people not knowing what they had. And so it could be somebody was having a garage sale or we were at a vintage store and things like that, and antique store, and they would have a dresser for super cheap and that kind of thing. And those were the things that were actually some of the hardest for us to get rid of because we're like, frankly, we'll just be honest right now. We have all IKEA stuff. We had to outfit our house in IKEA stuff when we moved here. Because that was what was in our budget. And so, and people in London, at least when they have a mid-century piece, they know they have it now. And so they actually charge what it is.
Well, I think, and I think too, just looking at most spaces here and stuff like that, you just can't. The only way to get half the stuff in here is to flat pack it and it be in,
Exactly.
To get certain items of furniture and things like that into different places. It's like, it's like a jigsaw puzzle trying to get things in. So
so those things were hard to sell. It was really neat to hear some people's stories that were getting that stuff and bought that stuff, how much they'd always want a mid-century dresser in their house and things like that. So that was fun to hear. But we'll be honest, those were hard things.
I wish we still had those.
And frankly, for a lot of those too, because you'd be surprised if you have some things like that in your house that you can make a profit. Like I know one dresser we spent $40 on and we sold it for $400.
Oh shush! You're not supposed to say that.
Why?
I'm kidding.
But and that because that's what it was worth by the time we had it, like mid-century stuff was like through the roof, and so the timing just happened to be right on a couple of those things that was super helpful then for us when we moved. So. But I think overall, I mean, what was your overall feeling of, I mean, again, we're not saying that it was 100% easy.
Yeah.
It was not, it was hard. There were definitely tears from us, the kids, of things that we had to get rid of. I mean, we haven't even touched on the fact that we actually had to give our dog to another family.
Yeah.
We couldn't bring our dog to London with us
But
because of the expense of
our
it.
dog's so happy
And our dog
now.
is so happy with this woman and in such a great spot.
It's a great story.
That was gut wrenching, and I don't consider her a thing. So we're talking about things right now. She was a part of our family.
Yeah,
our
yeah.
dog was. So that was on a different level.
Yeah.
It still is on a different level. We still will miss her.
Yeah.
But how did you feel like getting rid of things?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you first do it, I think it's always just very surreal, I think, in a lot of ways, because again, you are going through things and you're processing, why do you have it? Again, does this really mean anything to me? Or if it does, then you start going down memory lane with it and just all these kind of things. Like, so it's a very surreal thing. But once I felt like we got into a routine, it's so freeing. It's so like when we got rid of everything and when we moved here and we started over, it really, we were able to really go, okay, like, do we need that or do we not? Like, are we going to get this? Are we going to use it? You know? And so I think, again, it's just been so, it's just been so freeing. I think that, you know, the attachment to things and stuff feels vastly different than when I think we first stepped into our marriage and we bought all the stuff for our house and like all that kind of stuff, where I think now I don't, you know, if we get something, then okay, something's got to go. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, you just get rid of it and all that kind of thing. I don't know how, I mean, is that similar for you? I mean, it was so freeing for me.
Yeah, I think the fact, even if we hadn't moved and we had still gone through the process of decluttering and everything like that, and now we're super careful. After you've done something like that, you want to go through these questions when anything enters your home too, actually.
Yeah.
And I think what it has done too is like our house is easier to maintain.
Yeah, that's
like when you don't have a lot of stuff, I don't have to reorganize constantly. It's easier for the kids to find their toys. It's easier for us to clean up. Like, I mean, all of those things, when you don't have a lot of stuff accumulated, you don't have that like, oh gosh, I need to pick up the house. Oh gosh, there's too much stuff. I'm too overwhelmed. I can't do it. Instead, it's like, oh, easy. I know where that thing goes. That has a place. Yep. That has a place. And then if you get new stuff and it doesn't fit, something's got to go. Yeah. And so we still, even though we've gone through this process and stuff like that, I just took 2 bags of stuff to charity. Now, some of that was stuff kids have grown out of and things like that. But then there were a couple of things that Jude was like, I don't play with. Like, Christmas came and we said to the kids, you got to get rid of some stuff for these new things to come in. And they're, especially for Jude, who is our kid who likes to hold on to things more. I was like, oh yeah, here are 3 toys you can hand off to somebody else and that kind of thing. And so we still give away stuff, even though we've gone through this process.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope.
Although, to be fair, like, you've always had this thing of like, we just get rid of it.
Yeah, if we're not using it,
just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Although half the time, then it's like
not
a
half
couple
time.
weeks
Sometimes.
later, we realize,
like, wait, what did I do with that thing?
Oh, where did that go? And then you're like, oh wait, I got rid of that.
And some of us, this is going to be easier than others. Some of us have a huge attachment to things and that kind of thing. Sometimes call a friend, like we said, if that is you. Call a friend and help them like put stuff into piles. Like this is go, this is, you know, this is keep, this is I still need some time to consider, like kind of thing. If you need help, call some friends and have them help you. We've done that for friends. And sometimes having outside help helps a lot. But it's no matter whether you are moving, whether you are just trying to declutter your home, it just like what it felt like to sell everything and to start over fresh. Like, there was lots of sadness in it. We had built that stuff up over years and created a home we really did love, but it's just things. Like, it really is just things.
Yeah, I think it too. It was really helpful to realize, actually, what do I really need to live?
Yeah, and figure out.
It's such a big question. Like, it's a really big like thought, but it like really is true. Like, we don't really need that much.
Yeah. And figure out those things, like we said. It may seem dumb to you guys that we brought our popcorn maker with us, our Whirly Pop, but to us that meant something, and it's something so small. I mean, It's a little bit of a bigger item, but it was enough that like as soon as we made popcorn in our new house and you could smell the popcorn popping, I was like, oh, okay, we're home. Like this is our new home. So whatever those things are, that's okay. Don't let someone else judge you for that.
Yeah.
Like you're going to have those little things that don't make sense to people, and that's okay. You got to do those things of what is right for your family. We hope that this has been helpful for you, or you can share this with somebody maybe you know that's going through a move, or I don't know.
Or you're just thinking about, getting rid of stuff.
Getting rid of stuff, decluttering. You're sick of having a lot of stuff in your house, that kind of thing. That we hope that it's helpful. Definitely leave us a note on the podcast reviews, or stop by our Instagram and say something to us. We'd love to hear from you, and we are thankful for you being part of this community.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode of the Laurent Collective podcast. If you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave a review, which helps others find our podcast. Continue the conversation with us over on Instagram at Laurent Collective.
We look forward to going deeper than just surface talk with you again next week.